One of the hardest things I had to do during that season of my life was help care for my mother. To understand why that was so difficult, you have to understand that my mother and I never really had the kind of relationship I longed for as a child. It was strained, painful, emotionally distant for most of my life. My siblings and I grew up in a home where addiction consumed so much of our parents' attention. My mother focus was often on drugs, my father and surviving her own brokenness. As children, we wanted love, protection, nurturing, and affection, but many times we felt overlooked and emotionally abandoned. For years, my mother battled addiction, and then something happened that I never thought I would ever see. For the first time in my life, she went to rehab and stayed there. She committed to getting sober at 71. But as soon as the drugs were no longer masking what was happening inside her body, her health began to decline. Then the pandemic hit. At the beginning of the pandemic, my father passed away. Their relationship was complicated and unhealthy in many ways, but they had spent decades looking after one another in their own dysfunctional way, making sure the other didn't overdose, making sure the other was still breathing. And I know after my father died that my mother's decline would probably happen quickly. Not long after, we learned she had cancer. She was 71 years old, and suddenly I was looking at a version of my mother I had never known. She was still feisty, still stubborn. She didn't want to listen to the doctors. She didn't want to listen to me. And honestly, there were moments when I didn't want to be in that position at all. Not because I didn't love her, but because I was carrying the grief of never receiving the mother I needed. I had never seen her sick. I had never seen her weak. And I wasn't prepared for what caregiving would require of me emotionally. Many nights I cried, not because I was afraid she would die, but because I knew her illness would slowly begin to consume my life. And at the same time, my life was already unraveling. I was grieving a divorce. I was grieving the loss of who I thought I was. I was questioning my self-worth. I was trying to keep businesses going. I was trying to heal. And somehow, I just kept pushing through. I became the sibling who was able to take care of her and take her to her appointments, sit in the hospital, help manage medication, and show up when others couldn't because they had families, jobs, and responsibilities of their own. I did it even when I resented it. I didn't even feel like doing it. I felt angry. I did it even when I hated what it was costing me emotionally. And I think what made it so painful was realizing that I was giving care to someone I had spent my entire childhood wishing they would care for me. But I also began to understand something else. My mother was broken long before I ever arrived here. That understanding didn't ease the wounds. It didn't suddenly make me feel mothered, but it did help me to offer grace. And maybe that's what healing looks like sometimes. Not pretending that the pain never exists, but choosing compassion while finally allowing yourself to acknowledge that you deserve better too.